approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Just a date correction, it says the 14th on here. I mean, it's minute.
Well, I think that was when
When it was sent?
Yeah, when it was
Okay.
sent, so,
That's taken
Yeah.
before.
Gotcha.
you're not the first one, I've done that before.
Got
Yeah.
it. I see, then it's,
We don't have to do it that way either. We could change it.
No.
It's confusing.
Yeah. So would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll offer that.
Right, thank you, Caroline.
Second.
Thank you. Rebecca? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Hearing all those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved. The next item on the agenda is the housing study presentation by Amy Baldwin from the county. This should be interesting for those that didn't make the meeting, and repetitive for those that did.
I don't think, other than staff, I think this will be new information for folks, so. All right.
Is this the 4-hour presentation, or?
I was wondering how much time I have. It does depend on how many questions you have and how quickly I go. So, great. Well, thank you for the time today. And again, the goal is to review the housing needs analysis that Otter Tail County prepared. And the Port Authority was a funding partner on, as well as the PERM, EDA, and HRA also participated in the funding for this analysis that was completed. So just kind of taking a quick review before I get into some of the data from that analysis. At the county, we look at our economic development and community development strategies through a shared lens. We partner strategically with Otter Tail Lakes Country, the HRA, the CDA, the Community Development Agency that I most specifically represent, as well as the county overall. And we look at these 4 areas of work that we do, putting Otter Tail County on the map, both for residents, certainly visitors, and as well as others looking for a place. And Otter Tail Lakes Country is the lead on that and really does that work. I think you've all seen the otter and other things. The area where the Community Development Agency leads is under infrastructure, and infrastructure referring to housing, broadband, childcare, those things that people need to fully and successfully live once we're able to bring them to the county or stay in the county if they're already here. A third area, which is also a focus of the CDA, is around employer supports, and we've recently launched OTC Works, and under there we have a new youth workforce navigation effort and have a number of other programs and efforts that are advancing under how we're supporting our employers. And then the final area is welcoming communities, and really all of those partners that I mentioned work within that realm and trying to, again, ensure we have communities that are supportive, welcoming, and create a place that people want to be. So we all work to strive towards that. So under the infrastructure, certainly housing is a key effort, and as you, I'm sure, all have heard and seen, as I've been here before, talking about the goal of the Big Build, which is to have 5,000 new preserved or rehabbed units by 2025 throughout the county. Doing that through 4 areas, certainly supporting the increase of new construction of various household types, and that meets various income levels. And we will talk about the income and affordability side and some of the data coming up. The second area is to work to build partnerships and expand the capacity of those who are working within this realm of housing, both from developers to nonprofits and others who touch, and so we can work more effectively together to address the housing challenges. And then the last 2 are really looking to seek funding opportunities that can help leverage the work that we're doing. And then finally to advocate for increased funding and support that really is aligned with the needs that we see here in Otter Tail County. So that's where we kind of see our realm of work throughout housing. So I just wanted to kind of set that baseline, and then since launched in the end of 2019, we are 30% towards that goal of 5,000 housing units. So, any questions on that before I get into the data of the housing needs analysis? Which I will say is fairly high level because I know we don't have 4 hours, but the full report is available in its 180-page glory on the county's website. All right, well, seeing no questions, we'll jump in. And why is it important to think about this data? So just wanted to set this stage, and we used this at the Housing Summit that was referenced earlier a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago. That we need to understand what are the needs to help provide that clarity and direction for all of our housing partners, whether local communities or developers, to move towards action. And the project scope for this needs analysis, was the objective was to provide that analysis for the county. The approach we took was looking at the current and future housing needs, both of the county as a whole, and then we also divided into 5 submarkets. So we'll be, as I go through the information, I'll do the county overall, and then the southwest submarket, which includes predominantly Fergus Falls and the surrounding areas, and I'll show a map of what that is in just a bit. So in the deliverables of that report, we see demographic and economic drivers outlined, market performance of the various real estate types, and then some recommended housing products that will meet those needs into the future. What's getting built now, what isn't getting built, what's needed. All right, as I mentioned, we looked at 5 submarkets, so northwest, northeast, central, southwest, and southeast. And we looked at those based on we worked with communities, we talked to realtors to kind of identify what are those kind of market areas that someone, if they're looking, you'll see Highway 10, Highway 94, predominantly included within the same submarket. And so we worked with that and then used township boundaries for ease of pulling the various demographic components by township. There's just a little larger version of the Fergus Falls submarket. It does include Underwood, Dalton, and Elizabeth as the other communities within it. Any questions about the submarket? I have the list of townships if you want to see it, but there's a lot of them, as we know. All right, so getting into some of the data. So home sale trends. As we've all seen, I'm sure have been seeing in the market, hearing from anyone who might be looking for a home, over the last 5 years, non-lake lakeshore median prices have risen nearly 42% from a median price perspective. And you can see on the chart, it shows the top line is the lakefront, and then the bottom line being non-lakefront. The blue or the green bar being total transactions and or number of sales, and then the blue bar again reflecting the lake number of sales. So we've been seeing this across the country, really the continually increasing prices. This is one of the largest increases based on just informal conversation with some folks in the marketplace that they've seen in a 5-year period, one of the most substantial price increases that we've seen for our area. I just saw the Twin Cities market saw their highest price ever in an annualized basis. And so, we're not immune to what's happening, but a number of areas that were noted as far as why are the prices increasing. So we have another generation in the buying place. Millennials are really a big chunk of the buyers that maybe had been sitting on the sideline for various reasons. Interest rates had been very low. They're still quite low given looking across history of what interest rates may be for purchasing homes. But then that coupled with that high cost of new construction, which is preventing new product from coming on market, and then just resulting in that 2-month supply of homes versus a healthy market of 6-month supply within the for sale market. So numbers are pretty typical when we go to the Southwest, or not typical, very similar when we look at Southwest compared to the overall county. So seeing over a 40% of non-lake median price increase, and then a 20% of lakefront median price. Any questions on the for sale market piece?
Is it the lakefront is separated out? That in the 40% is the 20% included, or is it just purely split between lake and non-lake? 'Cause I'm surprised that lake didn't go up more.
Yeah.
We're already overpriced in the first place.
Well, something to that effect, that they already had seen substantial price increases, more so in the lakefront properties in prior years. So there's already has been that price increase that we've
That
just
taking
seen.
place.
Yep.
Question, when is the end date really July of 21 or is this 2020 information?
This is through July of 2021. We engaged our partner on this work last August.
Because I would say what we've seen was that in going through 21 was there was an enormous gain in values and significantly more than the 20% value of what we saw for the year of 2021. I'm just wondering if the sales that they had, if these are closing dates in July, that maybe the sales took place in the very early spring and then the prices went up from that point.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like if it's halfway through 21, I would agree. I think you're going to see another lift.
Certainly,
Yeah.
that was just the
Yeah.
data point we needed
Yeah,
to use.
to
Had
get to close
start
it.
somewhere, and that's when the data was available.
Rebecca,
to
you
pull.
had a question?
No.
Oh, sorry.
All right, and then certainly as well a tight rental market within Otter Tail County. This is the overall. Generally, we looking to a 5% vacancy for a healthy market, meaning people are moving in, moving out. There is vacancy when someone may come to start a new job or move to the area or be looking just to transition. And we are not seeing that healthy rental market within the county. While there is new production coming online, it's not enough to meet the demand that we're seeing. So again, countywide, looked at, this was from October of 2021, in the market rate, so general occupancy rental under 2%, affordable about 2.8%, and then subsidized slightly higher on that for the numbers there. But if we get to the Southwest market, again, about 500 market rate units in that were surveyed with or included within this, so about 2.4% vacancy, affordable less than 1%, and subsidized 2% from a vacancy perspective. Okay. Any questions on the rental side? I don't have rental rates included in here, and that just varies so much across the board, but that was in the overall vacancy. And any of those could be, it's not that they weren't necessarily even not rented. They could have just been vacant at that point in time. This is a point in time survey. It may have been vacant, but yet rented, and 2 weeks later, someone, was scheduled to move in. Okay, and so I mentioned the affordable and entry level. So the this is the countywide, and then again we'll go to the Southwest market, but not a lot of differences. Though the split of the blue is represents the owners and the income associated with those, the percent of owners, and then the orange being the renter income. So as you might expect, on the left side of the chart, you'll see a lower, the less income a household might have, the more likelihood they are to be a renter. And then conversely, on the right side, the higher the income, much more predominantly ownership on that side. So just a couple of notes, 75% of our renter households have household incomes of less than $50,000. And that is really what's driving a need for some affordable and entry-level housing options within the county. So now showing the Southwest specific market, you'll see an even a bigger split between that lowest income bar on the left and similar numbers to the right of this chart. So owner median income within the Southwest market is about $60,000, and just to flip back up to the county-wide, it is $68,000 from a median income perspective, and renter income county-wide $31,000, renter median income of $26,000, just about $27,000 within the Southwest market. And I did look up I had a question earlier about the the average income. And countywide, the average income is $59,000 from a household perspective. So our mean and our median are quite close to each other. All right. The data also shows, of course, strong demand for senior. We know what our numbers are doing from a demographic perspective. But as we get into some of the occupancy demand for senior and other groups, how we're thinking about this. So while certainly there's an increase in our aging population, there's not the suggestion, and we'll see this come out in the numbers, that there be a lot of senior housing with services to be built, that there's different ways to accommodate that growth, and thinking about the future and the next cycle of who might be living in that housing product. May not be a senior, but how do you think about that housing that might be well suited for an entry-level homeowner as well? So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But what is important to think about with this, and it's something that we've talked about when I've been here before, is how to create that churn in the housing market. So creating a housing product that someone who might be in this older age cohort is currently living in, their maybe more affordable single-family home, where is that product that they're going to move to so they can go to their next stage of housing to allow someone else to come into that entry-level home? So how do you create that flow through the marketplace of housing? All right, so now getting into the occupancy, and I can share these slides when we're done as well, so you can have these numbers in the future and reference them with the full report as well. So the highest demand countywide is for single-family for-sale homes, particularly that entry-level home, and they did talk about this being $250,000 or less, which is very difficult to build right now. We know that. That's why it's not getting built. There's not a model that works really well for that. But townhomes has been one area that you in Fergus Falls have seen success in the last few years. So those for-sale twin homes were around that entry point of $250,000, but getting more challenging to get that built at that price point. The next, looking at for sale multifamily units, market rate rental units, affordable rental units, and I'll just highlight the affordable rental unit to note when we flip to the Southwest market, and then looking at subsidized rental units. So just to give some definition of the distinction between an affordable rental unit versus a subsidized rental unit. An affordable unit is one that has rents that are built into the development that are affordable to folks of certain incomes. So the rent is set at $600, or a price again that's more affordable to different incomes. A subsidized unit is going to have a monetary injection to support it, other than just the income or payment by the tenant. So it's a simple version of it, but just wanted to make that distinction. All right, so looking at Southwest, again, high demand for the for sale single family, for sale multifamily, showing about just less than half. Market rate rental, 452 units, and affordable rental units of 122. And I mentioned, just comparing that in looking at the proportion of numbers that are attributed to Fergus Falls by comparison, or really Fergus Falls is the primary population within this submarket, so you can make those assumptions. And then the subsidized units, 156. So, and this is looking out for 15 years. I should have clarified that. So this is the 15-year demand. Okay, those prior numbers exclude senior. So those are separate, non-senior demand. So then getting into different types of senior housing. So the top line are general occupancy units from a non-service perspective. As you get to the yellow numbers, those have some level of service involved with them. So really thinking about the blue lines, or green lines, of the active adult owner. So that's what we have been seeing with that demand of the for sale twin homes in the community, but also a similar demand to active adult market rate rental. I think you've seen that with River Oaks Landing. That's been a very supported project with demand. But then getting into the last two, affordable, active adult affordable, and then active adult subsidized. So a number when if you recall, about a year ago, we had Minnesota Housing Partnership do a conversation with the Port Authority and talked about housing with them, and that affordable senior housing and how many of our senior renters right now are paying more than their 30% kind of proportionate income to their housing expenses is over, countywide is over 50% of our senior renters are paying more than 30% of their income towards housing, which is called cost burdened, but it just comes out to play here as well. So I wanted to make that connection. All right, any questions on the demand numbers before I continue? I just have a couple more slides. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't flip to should have flipped to the Southwest market in that senior. So the last numbers were Otter Tail County specific. So this is where really you see that active adult affordable number pretty dominant here. And you will see some negatives as well. So that means you've built for the future. Those numbers will be absorbed, but anticipated to be absorbed, but are reflected as being met at this point. Okay. All right, and I handed out this map, and there are some additional copies up here. And this overviews the 5 submarkets as far as those development opportunities. And this is the 5-year number, so not the 15-year number that I referenced that we were looking at earlier. So the numbers aren't going to match what we just reviewed because these are just 5-year development opportunities. And it's a little different calculation. The consultant we worked with kind of think about this as the development appetite. What's the near-term demand for different housing products, and then the single page kind of written charts, those are the same numbers just in a different form, but just for the Southwest market. So those are the 2 handouts that I provided there. Certainly this just some disclaimer pieces that our consultant likes us to reference. This is not a market study for a specific project. You would need to look at numbers more specifically if there was a project proposal. Developers certainly understand that. Lenders certainly understand that, but wanted to make that specifically stated. But what this does do is help promote the opportunities in your community, in your area, as you think about what you might want to be trying to attract or seek out from a housing use perspective, or what those needs are going to be as you look into the future. And one other note, it kind of ties back to those negative demand numbers that we saw. What this doesn't reflect is that you may also as a community be attracting people from outside of your submarket. So that's why looking at this especially those some of those numbers, it's not just the demand of the Southwest submarket that's going to fill those units. It's a broader regional service that Fergus Falls or other larger regional centers might be providing. So just another note on those senior numbers, especially those with services. So looking at that broader market is probably more applicable because many of our small communities aren't going to have those types of housing options. So those were the main highlights that I wanted to provide. Again, the full report is available on the county's website, and we're happy to share out that link on that piece. And I don't know how much time we have, but happy to share more also about the new housing finance resources that we have available through the county as a result of the American Rescue Plan dollars. There has been $2 million dedicated to support new housing growth, particularly around affordable, as well as some small supports towards infrastructure as well. Okay. Sure, I can just do real quick.
Amy, can I
We
just ask
talked
you a
about the,
question about this?
yeah,
So these numbers would be going forward, like from here, this is what we would anticipate needing or wanting or being good to have over the next 5 years.
Yep, that's kind of the appetite, the market appetite
Okay.
is some of the phrasing that our consultant used.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, okay.
Yep, it's looking forward.
Looking forward.
Yep, not based, yep,
Yep, and not current and forward, just
forward.
more, plus.
Yep, a plus, yes, those are
Plus.
pluses.
Okay.
Yep. We've talked about the long-range strategic plan, mentioned the American Rescue Plan funding. So with the new housing programs, I'll again briefly highlight, we have $2 million, which we're categorizing generally as big build, and those are funds, again, made available as a result of the American Rescue Plan, not an increase to taxes, using those one-time dollars to infuse into housing investment. We've also established a housing trust fund. Currently, those funds are only, that fund is only capitalized with funds from the special benefits levy for the HRA, which does exclude Fergus Falls. So currently, the housing trust fund would not, those dollars would not be available within Fergus Falls or Perham. As we look, trying to create new homes, but also keep people in homes, so supporting new construction, again, focused on workforce and affordable housing, and then rehabbing our existing housing stock, making sure we're investing in that. We have a number of principles, we won't worry about that. The public infrastructure, that's really to kind of overcome a gap within the cost of infrastructure. All requires a match to do this, and all these programs would be looking to have a match. And every project, maybe one of the principles is to align the need with the best source of funding. So when we get that project coming in, we would say, you know, how do we best fit the need? What is the need of the project, and how do we best meet it? And so if that is through a public infrastructure, which the city would be the applicant for, that is a possibility. We also have what's called owner-occupied value gap that helps overcome that gap between what it costs to build a unit and the actual sale price. We know that's a challenge, particularly in our smallest communities where there just isn't a market and appraisal history to warrant higher prices. So that is going out. Also, expanded down payment assistance, looking at not just first-time home buyers, but we're helping people get into homes. Maybe they're not in their first-time home buyer situation. Can be paired with other programs as well. Rental gap financing, so a multifamily project that has a gap in its lending structure, so coming in as a deferred or reduced interest rate, you know, different forms. Again, what is the need of the project to get it off the ground? And this does have an income limitation on what households are served within that. And then some of the rehab, looking at trying to, again, improve some of our owner-occupied structures. This one does have additional criteria that looks at if a community has accessed small cities development funds from the state of Minnesota. This is really geared towards those communities that haven't been able to access those funds in the past, which Fergus has been very successful in. Rental rehab, though, that would be potentially available within Fergus, and this would be an applicant, an owner direct would apply for this to do rehab on existing rental within a community. And so just briefly review the application process. A local approval is needed. We do want a sign off, even if a developer or a current owner is applying for these funds. We do want the city to give their blessing because we want to make sure a project is not contrary to what the goals and objectives of a community is. So we would want a local approval, and that doesn't have to come before we start the conversation, but does need to be in place, that there'd be that support from the local jurisdiction. So we would just work through an application process and get the funds out the door to hopefully see construction. There's the abbreviated. These are just some of the income limits, but related to that. One piece with this, these funds are running through the Community Development Agency, which is relatively new, and we haven't done project work in Fergus Falls because you have active staff and other agencies to partner with. But in this case, we would look to want to have more of a specific partnership with the city or potentially the Port Authority, I guess, in way of a resolution authorizing the area of operation more fully for the CDA to work within Fergus Falls. So we can bring that forward at a future time. That is something you can opt into. There is a 5-year provision before you could opt back out within state statute. So nothing that needs to be addressed today, but just wanted to introduce that as something that would be coming forward in the future if Fergus Falls wishes to, or has programs or projects that might be applicable within these housing programs. Okay, that was a lot in just a couple minutes,
yeah.
but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Amy? As you say, a lot of information, well, at least condensed from 86 pages.
Yeah, and certainly, staff was at the housing summit that we held a week and a half ago and heard a lot of this in much more detail, so has that information to bring back to the policymakers here as well. Or I'm happy to answer any questions in the future too.
Quick question, is this online or in person?
Those would be virtual. So one other piece I handed out. I just brought these because we did have these at the Housing Summit, that if folks wanted to continue the conversation around housing and how we might be able to work together, share information, knowledge, resources, these will be virtual convenings that we'll host on a quarterly basis. There may be some opportunity for some on-site visits, but our intention is to be virtual. And we've done this with employer groups so far, and we've had good engagement. So kind of mirroring that around housing to share information, resources, programs, et cetera. Successes as well. Okay, thank
So
you,
do we
Rebecca.
just sign up
Yep, just,
online or something?
you can just leave your little form and it's online too, but it's easier just for us to take them than for you to find it.
No little ballot box you need us to
No,
put it in?
no, we'll just collect them. Clara can collect them and get them over to me. Okay.
If no other questions, thank you very much, Amy. It was interesting.
Thank you.
There's a lot of data.
Yeah.
So the next item on the agenda would be the racetrack lease extension request and request for first right of refusal on Port Authority property.
Yes. I'm just gonna pull up the map. All right. So we have talked about this, the deal we have going with the racetrack a few different times over the last several months / year. Essentially, the conversation has changed again slightly. So we had thought that the racetrack was going to be coming back to the Port Authority with a letter of intent to purchase the full parcel of land that we have available there to the left of the speedway, so that top portion above the parcel that we sold last year. Now they have changed their mind a little bit. What they are looking to do instead is rent about 10 acres right around that small wetland, so like right here. Right here. And they would use that for the Rezone race that comes in once a year as a camping area, and they are not going to be making any requests to purchase at this point. The reason that we're talking about this again is because they have made a request that is slightly different than the lease we've had before. They are hoping they can enter into a 2-year lease rather than a 1-year lease, because the Rezone race is contracted to be here for the next 2 years. So I said, yep, we can definitely discuss doing a 2-year lease, and then they would like to talk about entering, if Wissota comes back, they need to go through a bidding process. If Wissota comes back, they would want to talk about what that could look like in the future with potentially a longer lease that would match the contracted amount of time with Wissota, so they knew that they would have access to the land going forward. With this request, we did check in with the farmer who has been farming this land kind of on and off the parcels that he's had access to. He is interested in continuing to farm, so we still do have somebody who will be able to take care of the land, and the racetrack has agreed that they would find somebody to hay the 10 acres that they would be using. So that's the lease part of it, so that's one request, is entering into a 2-year lease rather than a 1-year lease, and then revisiting that once those 2 years are up. Their other request is they would like to enter into a right of first refusal for purchase of the property, because they are still very interested in expanding their operations and having access to that land. We are obviously still talking about what it looks like to build a road across this property and use this for industrial development, which they are cognizant of and have expressed interest in working with us together on that in the past. But they do want to be kept in the loop if some sort of other offer for industrial growth is brought forward. So that is my request then, is can we work with Rolf to draft a right of first refusal with the racetrack? So 2 separate requests. Questions, comments?
What would be the benefit to us if we granted them that first right of refusal?
That's a good question. I suppose it would depend on if we're worried about selling the land or not, but if somebody else is coming forward with an offer, and that's why we're triggering the right of first refusal, there's probably not a huge benefit to us.
It seems like that could tie up potential development.
Possibly. Yep.
It'd also protect us from doing something we shouldn't in case, we just want to be able to look at our options, right? So, we could always just keep track of it, and if someone else comes up, we could engage them, but that would be the one thing to protect us from, I guess.
They've been a good partner.
Yeah.
They do have a fairly strong operation there, so I don't want to completely disregard their request for a right of first refusal, but that probably is something we should look at the language of with with Rolf, so that we can make sure that we're not tying ourselves to something in the future and keeping our options open.
Yeah, I guess that would just be my priority, is just making sure we can be nimble if a good offer comes down the pipe.
I would agree. I mean, I hear what you're saying, because obviously and I think as you say, we'd have to have some sort of short period where they have to kind of like commit, because as you say, they're not looking necessarily to pay the highest dollar.
Yeah.
Where obviously if somebody was coming in from an industrial point of view, they're going to potentially create jobs.
And then we look at the benefit to the tax base and,
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I don't think there's any harm in doing a first right of refusal, but I think it needs to be a short exit from our perspective.
yeah.
That if we get an offer, they can't take 6 months to debate, do we want to, and also their offer has to be, match or greater. I mean, preferably greater.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you add the value of somebody creating jobs. Yeah.
But it's not either or, right?
Yeah.
Like, they could take a section or parts, and then a developer could take a section or parts.
And I suppose that's the other thing, exactly how much,
Right.
which part are they looking at from a,
Yeah, so all of the conversations have centered around that section I just pointed out. And
Right.
it's been a while since you guys have seen one of the International Drive concept maps, but their section is directly where the road would go through. So, and that's based on the wetland delineations that got done earlier this year, and then also the ability to connect to a future road development that would get us eventually back down to Western Avenue.
Where that road's gonna go, how much do we have down below that?
Not a lot.
No, not, so.
I mean, the piece of land is a terrible piece of land because it's got so many wetlands in it that makes it extremely difficult to build.
We'd be going here. I think down here, it's like a buildable amount of
Yeah.
maybe 12 acres.
If it's written, properly, I don't think it
Right.
hurts us, and we're likely not to sell it to them, right? I mean, we maybe lease it, but we want to keep our options open for jobs, like you said. But I don't think a ROFR hurts us as long as it's written well.
And until we actually put that road in there, what is gonna be the opportunity of somebody actually wanting to purchase that piece?
Yeah.
Good point.
I mean, and that's a valid point, because I mean, we looked at the cost of the road and it was $2 million before.
So do you need two separate motions? That one would be to have the attorney draw up the,
One would be accepting them to enter into a 2-year lease with us rather than a 1-year lease. And then the second, yes, would be to request the city attorney to draft language that I would then bring back to you guys to
so we
look
don't
at.
need to.
The only thing I would say is if they would like that, should they not be drafting it and paying the attorney as opposed to us paying? We should be paying our attorney to just review it.
Seems fair.
Or they should pay, they should be paying, I mean, if they want the first right of refusal, they should pay to draft the document.
I can ask.
I mean,
Ask question.
because there's no gain for us, it's a gain for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
So, on that note, I would entertain a motion to approve a 2-year lease.
I'd second that.
Right, thank you. On the lease, did anybody have any objection to it being for 2 years? No. Okay, so Rebecca is making a motion to enter in a 2-year lease, and it was seconded by Tom. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved. Regarding the right of first refusal, should we make a motion that we're willing to enter it and subject to them drawing up a draft and paying the costs?
You're willing to
Well,
consider
yeah.
it?
Just Steve?
The question is, is it cost less for Rolf to do it just because they give us a document we've got to rewrite?
Yeah. I don't know, that's...
Leave it optional for Rolf, maybe?
Yeah, maybe ask Rolf what it's going to cost.
Okay.
You just want to draft it for your consideration at this time, right?
Yeah. Do you want to make that motion, Steve?
Sure, yes, please.
Steve is making that motion. We have a second. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. Right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved. The next item on the agenda is the dairy update and rezone request.
Yes, so we are continuing our work to get the dairy property ready to be sold. The appraisal is underway. The second appraisal with Shanahan Companies is underway. And at this point, we are starting to look at rezoning the property so that when it is sold, it is ready for the kind of development that the port has decided is a good fit for it. So at present, the property is actually zoned 2 different zones. There's a split sort of down the middle of it. Part of it is RA, residential agricultural, and part of it is I2, industrial, which is a little bit closer to where you would see the mill building, things like that. And so the question right now is, do we rezone the entire parcel R4, which would allow for multifamily housing on the site, as we've discussed before, or do we keep the river buffer parcel itself, so the 11.57 acres that we would be using as a trail and public access to the water, do we keep that as RA, so that if there is a future purchase of the land and something happens where we don't retain the right to that land, it still remains, they'd have to go ahead and rezone it to be able to build close to the river. Does that make sense?
Well, I wouldn't foresee us wanting to get rid of that. So I would say just the part that we're going to sell would be the only part I would think to rezone.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we will have to rezone it because it's awkwardly zoned as it is, so part of it is I2, so we'd want to just clean everything up. And we would do, if we went this direction, we'd do river buffer parcel would remain, or would be RA, and then the rest of it would be R4. I'm making a lot of hand gestures,
Sell the
but
river buffer
Yeah.
parcel, right?
No.
It's got covenants on it.
that's got covenants related to our LCCMR agreement.
You
Should,
could sell it, but you'd have to pay all the money back.
Yeah.
right. And I'm just, if something terrible were to happen and things didn't work out with the LCCMR stuff, there could be the possibility that we would not continue to have those covenants. So that's kind of where I'm getting with this is, do we want to be forward thinking toward that eventuality, that possible eventuality, and say, we want to keep this as a piece of land that is not touched by development by giving it an RA zone?
And the buffer fits typical development right now, so if we did that, we wouldn't be hindering the current developer at all.
No, and it's there's further work to be done on that as well, because the DNR actually designates that area as a lake, not a river, so the setbacks are different. But we're in conversation with them about what the right way to have that section identified is, and if it is actually a river.
Because equally, the goal would be out of the zoning to allow any development to be as close to the buffer trail as possible so that you get maximum advantage of building something that you can look out over the lake
Or river, depending on
or river.
how discussion
It's
goes.
an unnamed
Solar
lake.
river.
It's an unnamed lake.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, it's a river. So, I mean, I think today we should concentrate on the piece that we want to sell, which would, and cleaning that up from being RA and industrial to R4 would be the goal of today.
None of the buffer now is zoned in industrial, is it?
Yes, a
Or
chunk of it
it's all
is.
split too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And would this motion clean up that river as well? So the
Yeah,
river-
yep.
river-
So the application
the
that I have
trail would
in,
become RA,
yep.
and the non-trail will become
Yep.
R4.
So I would change what you see in your packet currently, because this is just to rezone the entire thing R4.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be accounting for an RA section, but I think it would be in our best interest, I think.
We want to get
To
it
do
out
it
of
RA.
I, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, we do.
Yep.
We want it out of I. So the question is, do we do the whole thing R4, or do we do R4 for where we want the development to happen, RA where we want?
I think RA for the trail and R4 for the housing.
Yep.
So,
Okay,
Make that motion.
thank you, Steve.
I'll second. No, it's Caroline is first.
So next
Steve
steps
and
on that-
Caroline.
then would be, the request would go to Planning Commission, and Planning Commission would take it from there to do the rezoning.
So all those in favor of that, the zoning amendment for the dairy property, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those against, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is approved to take it to planning. Is there anything else to be brought before the Port Authority this evening?
I do not think so.
If not, our meeting is adjourned.
And I will collect, if you filled out your housing cards, I can collect those.
I didn't actually have one.
If you build